Hi, it's Pastor Andy and another round of videos for this week. Today's video is about Esther, kind of, and how does Esther, the book of Esther and Queen Esther, relate to Romans? Well, many of you may be familiar with the name Darius from Scripture. There's actually a few times that a Darius is mentioned in Scripture. Most people are probably most familiar with Darius the Mede, Mede. He was the king when Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. But the most the most well-known king from history named Darius, not the most well-known king necessarily, but the most well-known king named Darius from history was Darius the Great, or Darius I, Darius the First. Now, he's also mentioned in the book of Ezra, but what where Darius comes into play is the fact that he was the father of Xerxes, and it is Xerxes who is the king during the time of Esther. So I'm putting a picture up here today. Susan's going to help me with these. This week we're going to put a picture up. This is actually called a stele, Stele, and what that means is some sort of a artistic impression or an inscription or something that is put on stone, generally from the past, or some sort of a manuscript of some sort. And this stele shows Darius the Great, Darius I, with a scepter in his hand, and behind him is his son Xerxes. Now, the reason this plays into Esther so well is in Esther chapter 4, verse 11, when Esther is talking to, corresponding back and forth with Mordecai, she makes this statement in Esther 4:11. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that if any man or woman goes to the king inside the inner court without being called, there is but one law, to be put to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter so that he may live. But as for me, I have not been called to come into the king these 30 days. So for 1 month, Esther had not been called to come before the king. And so she knew, and what she was commenting is that if she made an effort to go before the king, then she was risking her life. Well, when we think about the book of Romans, we have the idea of grace coming into play. We have the idea of justification by faith coming into play. But before we touch on Romans, let me jump all the way to the book of Hebrews. In Hebrews chapter 4, verses 14 through 16, the writer says this: Since then we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are, yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in a time of need. So, the idea of Romans 3 in general, before these great verses that we've been looking at in the paragraph 21 through 26, it's been talking about the fact that, kind of like Esther, there's nothing about us that would allow us to approach the throne. We can only hope, if we go in without being called, that scepter would be extended outward towards us, that we might live. But what God has done is He's made that scepter available to anyone. He's actually already extended that scepter to anyone who believes. That scepter is not a golden scepter. In fact, it's a piece of wood, a couple of pieces of wood fashioned together even in the form of a cross. God has already taken that scepter and He's extended that to us if we simply believe. So the question really is, we don't have to wonder what will happen. The question is are we willing to go before the king? In fact, it really should not even be a question of are we willing, because we should desire to go before the king. As the writer of Hebrews said, we can approach the throne with confidence, not arrogance. See, arrogance is about us. Arrogance is about who we are and about what we have done or what we might be able to do. But we can be confident in what Jesus has done. We can boldly approach the throne because of what Jesus has done, knowing that that scepter, so to speak, has already been extended to us. Esther may have been put in a certain time, in a certain place, for such a time as this, as the text tells us, to save her people. But our opportunity to approach God is in any time and in any place and for any reason in order that we might please our King. The question simply is, will we go?